Gachiakuta is the craziest looking story in manga, and that's in a world where Dandadan exists. That's because it's drawn by Kei Urana, an extremely talented artist who worked on Fire Force with Okubo, and as a massive fan of both series, it's pretty clear that Urana achieved this art style by combining the insane expression of Soul Eater and the incredible detail of Fire Force along with her own style. So in this video, I'd like to analyze the art in Gachiakuta, discuss what it borrows from its predecessors, and explain why I think Kei Urana might actually be better than Okubo. Just be warned that since I'm looking at the entire manga, this video may contain some spoilers. So right away, what I think stands out about Gachiakuta is the character designs. In fact, this is one of the best examples of Urana combining Fire Force and Soul Eater. If you compare the characters in Gachiakuta to the characters in Fire Force, they clearly have a lot more personality in terms of visuals. To be fair, this was probably deliberate on Okubo's part because he wanted the world of Fire Force to feel real, so part of that is achieved by using everyday looking characters. Compare that to Soul Eater and clearly there's a big difference. But even the characters in Gachiakuta have a lot more going on in their designs. If you look at Kid, he's definitely got a unique design with his funny looking hair, but besides that, he generally has a simple design. Rudo, on the other hand, has a lot going on with his messy hair that has like all the dusty highlights, his huge coat with all kinds of different details, and of course, his big eyes. Even with a simple looking character like Rudo, Urana puts a ton of little quirks into his design. And this is a recurring theme for all of the characters, Jabber being one of the craziest looking characters with his long dreads. Even a relatively plain character like Zonka has a bizarre design with his detailed outfit and silly haircut. Probably my favorite design though is of course Engine. Engine is a character that shows up out of nowhere, and right away you can tell he's like the coolest character in the story. He has a mask that looks like a bomb that he drew all over, he's got his cool tattoos, and of course he's got that umbrella that he carries around like a cane. All of this leaves you with the impression that Engine is just that dude, even before you know anything about him. And that's the case for a lot of these characters. So when it comes to designs, Urana is a genius. On a similar note, she's also great at character expression. As a matter of fact, as great as the designs are, they're just the door that gets you in. The expressions are what keeps you hooked on this story. You don't have to read very far to find some pretty crazy faces in this manga. For example, you have Rudo's embarrassed face here in chapter 1, except it's clearly got a bit more because in this panel Rudo's teeth are all sharp. So he's embarrassed and his teeth are drawn in a crude way to show how, I don't even know what you would call it, unrefined maybe? But it's clearly not your typical embarrassed face, and because of that, it speaks more to Rudo's character. This is done on both a micro level with little cartoony faces, as well as on a macro level with these kind of big facial expressions. It's not just the faces, as you can find a lot of bold poses in Gachiakuta, but the reaction faces definitely stand out the most. In this sense, Urana's work is clearly very unique. Unfortunately, this doesn't mean it's perfect, but before I say more on that, make sure to like the video if you're enjoying it so far. It's the easiest way to support the channel, and it helps spread the video to other viewers like you. So while I think the characters and their expressions make Gachiakuta look like any other manga, the paneling is relatively mundane. If I remember correctly, the paneling in Soul Eater was actually pretty good. It actually pushed the boundaries a bit. In Fire Force, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't anything crazy either. Again, it's been a hot minute, so I might be gaslighting myself on this one, but assuming I'm not completely insane, then I would say Gachiakuta is more in line with Fire Force in terms of paneling. It's, you know, good. In fact, Urana will break away from more conventional paneling in some of the fights. One example that really stands out is this one from chapter 15. Here, Urana draws the borders of the panels in a way that matches the sketchy theme of the characters in this scene. She combines that with a lot of white space in between those panels. As a result, it creates this feeling that Rudo is spacing out in a sort of fight or flight moment where all we can see are these key few moments, almost like he's blacking out. This is an example of where Urana's unique brand of creativity can be seen in the paneling, but for the most part, the paneling is just okay. I bring this up because paneling and sequencing are two elements of manga art that often go unnoticed. So especially for someone as insanely talented as Urana, you would kind of hope for more. But again, it's far from boring, and it gets the job done. That being said, where Urana makes up for this is in the way she draws the action scenes. One of the best examples of this is in the same fight where Rudo fights Jabber. The page consists of Rudo defending with this cool looking hand ability, while Jabber jumps all over the room trying to take advantage of a potential opening. As he jumps around, we get all these different viewpoints and angles, which is something that Urana does really well. A lot of times in manga, the paneling will be good and the panels will be pretty detailed, but those panels can also look pretty flat. In fact, one of the more common complaints I've seen from fans of different manga is that the fights look good in general, but they were hard to follow. This is never a problem in Gachiakuta, and it's because of how Urana changes the perspective for each panel of the fight. For example, on this page, it starts with Jabber's foot as he rushes toward Rudo. Here, our attention is drawn towards that one foot. In the next panel, we're shown Jabber starting to swing his arm, but as he does this, we're watching it happen from behind Jabber. Interestingly enough, we transition from this foot and almost flip from in front of Jabber to behind Jabber, which sets up the next panel where we zoom in on Rudo's reaction. This shifting perspective is great because it makes the fight feel more dynamic. It does this by presenting a perspective that's always changing, as well as a frame of view that aids the sequencing by shifting along with the focus of each panel. All of this comes together in panels like this one in chapter 19. Here, Zonka is attacking Jabber, and in this panel our focus is less on Zonka's action and more on the effect it has on Jabber. He's slammed onto the ground, his hair and clothes come crashing down. As this is happening, the tiles of the floor shatter and pieces of rubble go flying into the air. All of this illustrates the speed and power of Zonka's attack. And this is exactly the kind of visceral action that you can always expect in Gachiakuta. But while we're talking about detail, one last thing I'd like to mention is just how detailed this manga is. We already talked about how you can see this in the characters and their expressions, but another area you can see this in is in the setting of each scene. For example, another quirk of Fire Force that gets inherited is the urban graffiti style of color spreads. Here in this anniversary color spread, you can see all of the little details that Urana puts into the background, from the color in the sky, all the different text and graffiti art on the buildings, and even the falling items in the foreground. And if you're thinking, oh well, this is a color spread, obviously it's gonna look better, then you're wrong. There's very few manga I can say this about, but it's genuinely mind-boggling how Urana draws such detailed art on such a consistent basis. The only other artist I can really say this about is Yukinobu Tatsu, the creator of Dandadan. I realize this is the second time I've compared these two manga, and that's not exactly an accident. If you ask me, these are the two best looking manga that are currently running, but that's a discussion for another video. Now, it is worth noting that a lot of the time, the sky in Gachiakuta is blank. Because of this, there is a fair amount of white space in the manga. If I'm not mistaken, this is another quirk of Fire Force that Urana inherited, but in this case, it actually works in her favor. This world she's created is supposed to feel empty in a sense, and there is a big border in the sky, so it does work. Plus, when she does draw scenery, it looks incredible. As a result, Urana succeeds in creating a world that looks and feels unlike any other. When you take that in combination with the unique character designs, insane character expressions, and intense action, Gachiakuta is a manga that clearly stands out from everything else. The paneling can look really good in fight scenes, but generally speaking, it's nothing revolutionary. That being said, her characters and expressions feel so much like Fire Force and Soul Eater, but because of her raw talent and clear sense of creativity, it's very easy to tell where Okubo's influence begins and Urana's personality shines. which is saying a lot considering nobody draws with as much personality as Okubo does. For this reason, Urana's art is really the best of both worlds. It has the crazy, goofy vibes of classic shonen, and at the same time, it has a level of detail and expression that makes it one of the best looking manga of this generation. For all of those reasons and more, Gachiakuta is already one of the best looking manga of all time. But now I'd like to hear what you think. How would you rate the art in Gachiakuta? How does it compare to other manga? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week on my community tab. And if you'd like to join me for another discussion like this one, then check out my live streams every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. In those live streams, I react to new chapters, as well as discuss other anime and manga topics. Also check out my other Gachiakuta videos, which you can find in the playlist linked right here. Until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.